Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map. Recently I have done quite a few swaps and they start coming in. So today I received a deck that I actually used to have before. So I think maybe it was Katie Flowers who did this or mentioned that subject of regrets in tarot swaps. You know, I have a lot of tarot decks, but I usually use and have to love my tarot. So if a deck is valuable but it just lies there and I don't even feel drawn to, you know, pull it out and have it out to play with, then I'm just going like, what's the point? And I usually move those decks along because there's always someone who, you know, loves those decks as much as people who swap with me, you know, are over their decks. So this deck I used to have, and I remember buying it in London in Covent Garden, and I was there with my husband-to-be then. So it's quite emotional, but at some point I remember swapping it for the Tarot of the Crown, and not really regretting it then because I haven't really used it for a long time. And at that time I was very much drawn to decks like Tarot of the Crown, which are much more earthy, much more witchy, and I thought of this deck as being a little bit too fluffy and too out there in the New Age style. I'm talking about the Fifth Tarot. So it has just arrived today from the beautiful Catherine, and she also sent me, I'm totally surprised, but she also sent me that Aquarian tarot deck, which I believe it's maybe late 80s, early 90s, even though it says 1970 US games, but we know that 1970 cards, they don't have the copyrights, but these bags are the blue bags. And I actually, that's really funny with the Aquarian deck, because I received the first version of this deck I received from Lisa from Mindful Tarot as a gift as well, and now Catherine sent me this deck as a gift as well. So it's interesting. Maybe that's a hint that I should get back to using this tarot deck more. I mentioned this tarot deck in quite a few of my videos because I remember talking about it. Maybe it was in my tarot collection videos, which I link below, you can take a look. But I remember talking about this tarot deck, that it works, you know, I used to pull, for example, 3 cards before a client came in to see me, and just to see what the reading kind of would escalate around. And it's interesting how often, of course I wouldn't say it to the clients, but very often this deck kind of worked and showed me the issue that later on came up in tarot readings. So I thought the older the deck is around, the more people use it, and the more of us are kind of have been using it for a long time. There is this maybe common collective thread that creates like Akashic records for meanings, and then these decks seem to work really well, like Rider-Waite-Smith or Thoth, or, you know, decks that have been around forever, and especially decks that have been around when there was not so many new decks coming out, that people were actually working with these decks inclusively for many years. So thank you so much, Catherine, for sending this beautiful, and I think, I don't know if I actually say your name right, Katarina maybe, since your heritage is different than English, maybe. You tell me. Thank you anyway, I'm very touched. So let's go back to the Fifth Tarot. So it comes in that kind of fold-out box, and it is a deck as we enter the Aquarian Age of Peace. New tarot imagery and symbols are called for that reinforce our oneness with the natural world. And the Fifth Tarot introduces images of nature to represent the elements for each of the suits: fire, shells, feathers, stones, and lotuses. So the Fifth Tarot, it's like a regular tarot plus an extra suit. So the fifth suit of ether, or spirit. So we have fire, earth, air and water, and the fifth element. And the fifth suit specifically addresses the higher vibrational gifts emerging from with the shift of energy occurring through the activation of our DNA codes, our evolving crystalline structures, and our awakening as multidimensional beings. The fifth suit brings forth such concepts as telepathy, spontaneous healing, interdimensional travel, and transcendence, to name a few. The major arcana are attuned to the new archetypes emerging in our consciousness and are aligned with the higher aspects of the divine feminine, divine masculine, and sacred union. So this deck suits itself really well for meditation. And I remember having this deck, and I used to love a lot of the images. Okay, a little kind of spoiler or warning for people who love well-balanced decks, or decks that really have well-marked negative cards, so-called negative cards, so that there is this balance between light and dark. This is a deck that doesn't really have it in the superficial way, because, for example, I had this conversation with Nina also about Orosama Tarot. I think that in this deck as well, there's this highest aspect of every card possible marked on the card. So the negative meaning, yes, it's there as well, but these tarots kind of show how can you transcend that and use it to the most beneficial potential for you. But I can easily understand that that can be annoying at times, because it's also annoying to me when the decks are very kind of positive. This deck is different, positive to during virtue positivity, where everything is kind of like, you know, what's all going to be well. It's more nature based, and for example, you know, Nine of Fire, the keyword is flow, but we see a volcano erupting and the lava flowing. So in nature, would you say this is bad? This is a bad sign? Or, boo, you bad volcano, how dare you erupt and, you know, destroy and then to recreate? So no, you wouldn't say that. So this is a bit different, but at the same time, well, is it a good card or bad card? You know, even if we were to think good, bad, I know I don't really think like this in tarot, because to me each card in tarot has the bad and the good in it. So a lot depends on the neighbors, or a lot depends on the position of the spread, and a lot depends on how you read tarot. So for me, I don't really mind these decks these days, but I remember thinking of this deck like totally new agey, and I wouldn't use it. Now I've changed, because as I said to Anneke from Nobody Here, I'm floating with the Star Child in the high vibe world. So I feel drawn to these decks now, you know, and that's fine. That's where I am right now, and that's what rocks my world. So this is fire element, and they are a little bit color coded in those little borders, so they're different colors. So fire is red, and feathers, which is air, is yellow. And then major arcana, they green. I love this shadow card. So this is devil. Lovely. So you'd say again, like, you know, is it bad or good? Like, does she see the shadow? There is light cracking through the third eye of the shadow. There is a lot of power animals in this deck, so if you attuned to natural elementals energy, that this deck is beautiful like this. So this is that ether lotus element, so whatever color that is, like kind of brown or dark purple. Shells, which is water, it's dark blue. And then what else do we have? Shells, fire, and stones. We have also stones, and this is green as well, but lighter than the major. So 3 of stones, amber, and community. The court cards are renamed. I just binged on Game of Thrones, the last episode of the 7th season, you know, or the 6th season, when the dragon gets into the army of the dead and spews fire onto the wall. It's pretty impressive. So anyway, everything in this deck is different. So these are aces. You wouldn't recognize, I mean, a little bit maybe, you know, like 2 feathers, 2 crossed pipes, right? Like 2 crossed swords. So sometimes you would get some connections, and obviously the meanings are based on tarot's system, but they kind of put up a level. And in the element of stones, that's why I used to love this tarot as well. She uses a lot of crystals. There's a lot of sacred geometry. Right now I'm really loving this deck, so it's very beautiful. The artwork is gorgeous. The paper has heavy lamination, but it's very bendy, so despite the fact that there's more cards in the deck, it's easy to shuffle. That's Ace of Lotus, so 1 of Lotus expansion. And I wanna show you, for example, so, you know, she's using a lot of this kind of Eastern Om or Ama's feet for Initiates of Lotus. So for some people it might be a big no, and that's fine. But most of this deck, it's really based on nature and on different cultures. So she's using the monks, she's using the Native American depictions of people, but a lot of stones and natural kind of, like, you know, trees, fields and stuff like that. So for the stone element, she's using a lot of crystals. So there's turquoise, and I think it's maybe tektite or maybe moldavite. So as you see, it's a very natural deck, now I would call it. A realization for the Judgment card. I love this card, it's very cool. And so a lot of different birds. Record keeper for 1 of stones, so 1 of Ace of Pentacles. The moon card is really gorgeous too. This jumping whale and like fairy, so it's got that kind of darker aspect to it, but also that uplifting creative vibe that moon brings with itself too. And the star is beautiful with the Merkaba and sacred geometry. So a lot of mandalas, a lot of natural kind of elements, alchemy for the temperance. So easy to read if you're into like the natural world, natural elements. It brings also this, you know, attunement. So a lot of this wording which we know from New Age. Sometimes it's a bit annoying, but right now I like to work with it and it's okay. So I think you all have to, you know, figure it out for yourself. I like this Wheel of Fortune. From the Empress, it's a bit on the fairy tale side. Shells. Not the biggest fan of Death card, but yes, if you're into Egyptian mythology, then you probably will like it. That's gorgeous for the 1 of Feathers. But myself, being this person who is in general naturally inclined, as you know, like I work with wands and elementals a lot, this deck speaks to me, you know. I know what, when I look at this card, I don't even have to know what Apprentice of Shells is, and I don't really need to particularly connect it to the traditional tarot, because I can see what she's doing and how she's connecting and giving thanks and maybe tuning into it and using the intuition, you know, 1 hand in the water, 1 hand on the stone. There's herbs gathered, so it's really beautiful way to, you know, and we can say maybe Seeker of Stones, maybe that could be a more kind of barren card. Tower, it's interesting. So I love having many tarot decks for this reason. You know, you see this tarot and you think Tower, and you think like how how does it fit the traditional tower meaning that I know, and then you expand with all these decks, you expand your knowledge about tarot, you expand your knowledge about cards. And yes, there is a theory that, you know, thinning out what initially was and traditionally was thought, maybe with Rider-Waite-Smith meanings and stuff like that. But to be honest, if you this type of traditional reader, that's fine, just do your thing. But I'm like this, like I feel like I'm expanding, my consciousness is expanding. I'm not living in 19th century anymore, and I can expand my knowledge of tarot, and I can use tarot in a new way, and I can use archetypes of tarot in a way that suits me and where I'm at right now. So I don't mind when people introduce like changes to tarot like here, or they add a new element, at the same time studying and remembering what I know about tarot, because I love tarot system, and I'm not also so careless to say that tarot system, it's not important. But that's why I don't have only decks like this, but from time to time having a different deck or a deck that expands on tarot, adds to tarot, for me this is fine. I'm very happy to see it, and I want to see where I stand with this. Some of these decks I can go, nope, not for me. But this deck, the Fifth Tarot, or even the, you know, Dreams of Gaia, which lots of people had so many issues with, I don't mind, I like it. And this deck comes with this huge book, which also it's very lovely actually. I started reading it. Again, it has a lot of that lingo that can be very allergic to some people, but it also has some nice things like applications, which she gives some practical advice, like what can you do when you pull a certain card. So she gives you certain oils and stuff. So there is a lot of description about in general what the Four of Fire can be, with this expanded awareness, divinatory meaning, and then these applications of what can you do, like this practical magic, to embrace this card's energy. And then there is a few spreads at the end, and like tables of content, because she's using all these different symbols on the majors. So maybe you haven't noticed, but there are these different symbols like planetary symbols and some other ones which she explains into the tables at the end of the book. So for example, today I pulled the High Priestess, and I pulled the Shaman, and I pulled Lovers, wherever they are. Okay, so I pulled the Lovers, which was to me, you know, in the past kind of and subconscious, but it's about reconnecting the yin and yang and male and female. And then I pulled High Priestess, which I thought, okay, that's like the more feminine side. But then I pulled the Priest or the Shaman, which is kind of like telling me that I should be aware of reconnecting these two guys. So very spiritual. And what I did straight away, I read about the Shaman, I think, in here, and she says that the Shaman blend, so she gives you also info about essential oils. The Shaman blend truly connects to the earth and spiritual realms. Sandalwood, myrrh, base oils, other base oils, which have the earthy notes held in precious sisters, connected with the crown and the higher notes as frankincense, enlightened with a light floral note. So what I did now, right now, okay, I show you because my skulls are working on those, but I made myself, I had some leftover bottles, so I have here the High Priestess blend. So first of all, it comes in the frankincense oil bottle, which smells still of frankincense, which is amazing. But from Perfect Potion I bought this Hecate blend, essential oil blend, and it smells really lovely. So I thought that came straight to mind when I pulled that High Priestess card, and I thought I want to connect that Hecate blend, and I added a few drops of frankincense essential oil and I think that's it. And this one, and I made that kind of acacia base oil, so I added that oil which I like stood for 4 weeks and soaked in the acacia flowers. So this is the High Priestess blend, and then I put them into the circle of my skull so they can work on the, you know, kind of imbue and put some more energy and activate the oils. And then the shaman oil, I added sandalwood, I added frankincense, I added cedarwood, I added the myrrh oil, and a little bit of jasmine and a little bit of rose. So this one is even, yeah, it's different. So that's the shaman oil, activation oil. And now they both kind of are waiting to get activated by the crystals. So that's how I personally, creatively wanted to connect those two energies. And I got inspired by the cards, by the book, by the new deck. So Katrina, thank you so much for swapping with me, and I hope your crystals will arrive very soon. And thank you everyone for watching, and that was the 5th tarot. Thanks, bye.